Damian Collins.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. It's a great pleasure to follow the honourable gentleman, the member for North Antrim. It seems that his constituency has yet another passionate and powerful advocate to represent it in this chamber, and I'm sure members would also be delighted to see his father present in the galleries to witness the speech today too. I also have the distinction of following in giant footsteps, and I'm particularly pleased, Mr Deputy Speaker, to have the opportunity so early in this Parliament to pay tribute to my predecessor, Michael Howard. Michael Howard will be known by many members on both sides of this House for his 27 years of service to his constituents, and also, I would say, his fine record in government too. As a Secretary of State for the Environment and Employment, and also, and I hope my right honourable friend, the member for Maidenhead, will allow me this observation at this moment in time, possibly the finest Home Secretary this country has seen since the war. He will also be fondly remembered by members on this side of the House for his leadership of our party. He did not lead us to ultimate victory, but I think we would credit him with turning the corner of our fortunes and laying the foundations for the future success we enjoyed at the last general election. I was also privileged in my 4 years as the parliamentary candidate for Folkestone and Hythe to benefit from his friendship, his judgment and his insight, and I was very grateful for that. My right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, mentioned in an interview for a book that was published recently that Michael Howard had one of those brilliant, lawyerly minds that means he could win an argument even when he was in the wrong. And I'm sure all of those who've known him and worked with him will have seen that quality represented firsthand. I have the distinction, I would say as well, finally, that I think he was undoubtedly probably one of the finest politicians of his generation in the Conservative Party, and we remember him warmly for that. He was also dogged and determined in the pursuit of the interests of his constituents, and I would say in that regard, certainly, he was a man who certainly had something of the fight about him, and certainly something of the right about him. I have the distinction of being the 4th member to be elected to serve the constituency of Folkestone and Hythe since its creation in 1950. Although the Cinque Port towns of Hythe and New Romney within its boundaries have been represented continuously since the very first Parliament was summoned by Simon de Montfort in 1265. I am conscious as well, as the previous speakers have said, and as certainly the honourable member for Southwark and Bermondsey said, that I follow not just one distinguished predecessor, but a long line of people that have represented the people of Folkestone and Hythe in parliaments over the years, and that is certainly a great honour. I would just like to indulge the House with reference of 2 former members whose careers might be particularly relevant for the political times we find ourselves in today. Namely Sir Edward Watkin, who was a Victorian railway magnate, who was also responsible for one of the early attempts to build a channel tunnel at Folkestone. He was a rebel of his party in 1886 and sat as a Liberal Unionist in support of the Conservative administration of that time. And also Sir Philip Sassoon, who was the creator of the beautiful Port Lymm estate within my constituency, and a cousin of Siegfried Sassoon, the war poet. He was elected as a Conservative member, but in 1920 served as the Parliamentary Private Secretary to David Lloyd George in the post-war coalition government. The constituency itself is large and varied. It stretches for some 20 miles along the coast, from the Battle of Britain Memorial just to the east of Folkestone, along the coast down to Dungeness and the Kent-Sussex border. Inland it includes the unique landscape of the Romney Marsh and the beauty of the Elam Valley and the North Downs. Also, the Channel Tunnel, entrance and exit, is based within my constituency, and in with Folkestone itself, although no longer a seaport and ferry port, is undergoing a very exciting process of regeneration as it becomes a new hub for creativity and the arts, and I believe has a very bright future. This constituency also included, for the first time in an election, the Saxon Shore ward taken in from Ashford Borough. But true cartographers would probably say that the boundaries of the constituency are constantly changing, not to the pains of the Boundary Commission, but because of the shifting shingle peninsula at Dungeness, which is constantly moving with the climate. The force of nature seen by the location of lighthouses that were once offshore but are now hundreds of yards inland. A truly unique place on the English landscape that was referred by Charles Harper in his 1914 Guide to the Kentish Coast as one of the most remarkable places in England, a waste of shingle with here and there a sparse patch of gorse and stretching as far as the eye can reach. That landscape has not changed that much, but for one notable addition in the 1960s, which was the arrival of nuclear power. Nuclear power at Dungeness is an issue that my honourable friend, the member for Wealdon, knows I've taken a strong interest in and have corresponded with him on. And in this debate, I would just like to address some remarks towards that, nuclear power at Dungeness. Dungeness A power station was given approval in 1959, and there was a B generation power station opened in the 1960s, commissioned in the 1960s and opened in the 1980s. That power station is due to start decommissioning in 2017. And there had been a long assumption within my constituency that we would benefit from seeing a new generation nuclear power station as part of the government's new build programme. Now, earlier in the debate today, the Right Honourable Gentleman, the member for Doncaster North, cautioned us against sending out mixed messages on the future of nuclear power. Well, certainly my constituents would see a very evident mixed message from the last government that Dungeness was originally included on the government's list of possible sites for new build nuclear power stations and then was removed last autumn, and there has followed a consultation process into which my constituents have taken a very active and lively interest. There is a great deal of support for nuclear power within my constituency, and I'm sure honourable members that have nuclear sites within their constituencies know there is a good deal of support for them, because they generate a huge amount of jobs and support for the local economy that is very important. And in my constituency, the area of Dungeness and the Romney Marshes remain a relatively deprived part of not only my constituency, but of Kent and the southeast of England. And nuclear power could play a very important part in my community going forward. Now, it would appear from the consultation process launched by the last government that one of the main reasons for Dungeness being taken off of the government's list of potential sites was principally due to the objections of Natural England. They are a statutory consultee of the government, and in some ways they are only doing their job. But their assessment, based on the habitats regulations, was that the loss of the vegetated shingle on the area around Dungeness Power Station could not be mitigated for, that the landscape is too unique. Now, we would all in my constituency agree that it is a very unique landscape, but we would also be mindful of the fact that the potential development land for the new power station is potentially only 1% of the entire protected area of the SSI around Dungeness, Rye and Romney Marsh, a relatively small area of development. When in 1959 the Minister for Power gave the consent for the first power station to be built, he reached the conclusion that the level of mitigation was small enough, that the damage to the area was small enough, that it could not be said that the building of a power station compromised the integrity of the whole site. And I know that my constituents would hope that the new government is able to re-look again at the case for nuclear power at Dungeness and draw a similar conclusion, that it may be possible to work for the mitigation of the impact of the building of a new power station and not compromise the integrity of the entire site, one which is greatly valued not only by my constituents, but by people across the country. Because we see the great value that nuclear power has going forward to our community, and we would like to encourage and support it. I would just like to say in conclusion that my constituents would believe that having a sustainable environment is of foremost interest to everyone in the decades moving forward. But with it, we should also have a sustainable sense of opportunity for people as well. That with it, there's an opportunity for work, for a decent life, to provide for their families and children, and to hope that their children have a better standard of living than they themselves have enjoyed. We might say that these are eternal dreams and ambitions held by every generation of people, but they are only delivered and realised by the decisions that we take in this House every day. Thank you very much.
Hear, hear.